Sports Big Orange Podcast. I am Charlie Burns. That is Zach Reagan. Wherever you listen throughout the world, we thank you so much for listening to us. Zach and I talk everything Vols every week here on the Big Orange Podcast. If you want to listen to that on the regular, go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed on Apple or Spotify. And when you get there, rate, review, but also subscribe. Because if you do subscribe, you won't miss our shows when we drop them on Mondays. And speaking of Mondays, it is one right now at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. It's usually 7, but for some reason, Zach and I have fallen into this going live at 6. Hey, it's close by, you know. But the Monday, it's here. If you do this, it won't matter. Go to the YouTube page, A to Z Sports Nashville. Hit the subscribe button. Hit that notification bell. If you hit the notification bell, you'll be notified when we go live. So then it doesn't matter when we go live. And you can come be a part of the show, comment, hang out. We love going back and forth with everybody. It's always a great time. So go do that. At Charlie_Burrs, at Zach TNT, at A to Z Sports, Facebook.com/A to Z Sports Nashville, and A to Z Sports.com for everything that Zach writes on the internet. And boy, I'm not exactly sure how you're doing it right now, Zach, because it is, when it comes to Tennessee stuff, we're in a bit of a lull. Let's be completely honest. Tennessee baseball, of course, going strong. That's what we're going to lead off the show with. You know, we got to talk a little Tennessee Vandy. Always fun. But thankfully, and you know, let's knock on all the wood. There's nothing really going on right now. What the heck's up, man?
I mean, that's a good thing, right? I mean, we want it
exactly
to be quiet. There's not a lot of portal noise. There's not a lot of concern about, you know, some guy leaving and transferring. It's really just go out there and recruit, Josh Heupel. Go get some of these guys. This is the time of year where you make some big advances on the recruiting trail. That's the main objective right now for Tennessee football. Go get David Sanders, make him commit to Tennessee, get that 5-star offensive lineman in the commit column, and everything there's from gravy till the season starts.
Yeah, for basketball right now, I guess it's Chaz Lanier, which we might talk a little bit about in a minute. He played at the G League, whatever it's called, the G League Showcase.
Camp something. Yeah.
Had a performance there. We'll discuss that. But otherwise, that really is it in terms of what's going on right now. But we're going to talk about it. Baseball. I'm going to discuss a little bit about the Big Orange Caravan. Speaking of, this isn't necessarily a goings-on with active Tennessee, but it is an event that happens every single year. And the coaches for all Tennessee sports go around the state and meet with big groups of people. And it's kind of just a meet and greet sort of fundraiser-y thing. And it's specifically some interesting stuff to talk about. You know, Heupel's been there. Barnes has been there. The new women's basketball coach has been there. I have some thoughts on that. We're going to discuss that. And then, like I said, few odds and ends there. Chaz Lanier, maybe a little talk about that Jared Goff extension, which directly impacts the legend Hendon Hooker. Unfortunately, in an unfortunate way, it impacts him. But we're going to discuss it all on tonight's show, and we'll start that off right after I tell you about our first great sponsor, and that is Zen Sports. We've been talking to you about them all season long. They're bringing sports betting to a whole new level. When you sign for Zen Sports, you'll automatically earn up to a $100 no-danger first wager, and if your first bet loses, you'll be reimbursed for that amount up to $100. But there is even more good news. Zen Sports offers a one-of-a-kind VIP rewards program. If you qualify, you'll earn monthly comps at sporting events, concerts, you name it. There's even sportsbook bonuses, and the VIP program is by invite only. So if you feel your Zen Sports play qualifies for VIP status, check out the program at zensports.com/VIP. What are you waiting for? Zen Sports also offers true odds on all parlays, so get going and download the app at zensports.com today. Zen Sports betting just got better. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. No danger first wager. Limited to plus 500 odds to qualify. Boosted odds are derived from equivalent parlay bets offered in Tennessee. Must be 21 or older in Tennessee to bet. And I miss my calling, being the guy that reads the super quick print at the end of commercials. What was I thinking? I could have been doing that as my day job. All right. Tennessee played Vandy in baseball over the weekend, which is always, if not the funnest series of the year, certainly one of them. And the Vols walked right into Nashville, took the first two games. They weren't just runaways; they were good games overall. A little bit of Tennessee coming back here and there, some power hitting, and then game three. And I guess I don't know. I don't necessarily want to have this be the main point of conversation, but Tennessee just fell completely flat in game three. And for the first time in more than 3 years, Tennessee lost to Vanderbilt in baseball. It had been 8 straight games, 9 of the last 10, I think, that Tennessee had won. And the Vols finally dropped one. But did you watch these games, Zach?
Yeah, I was in and out throughout the weekend, and I mean, you went and took care of business, right? Like you said, you take 2 out of 3. You come back. Well, you were down 4-3. You come back with that huge winning inning to win 8-4. That game Sunday, I know that's like it always sucks in baseball when you win a series. If you're going to take 2 out of 3, you either want to lose the first game and win the last 2, or you win the rubber game. Like I feel like you win that rubber game. That is the way that is just you get momentum. Like you not only win the series, but you carry that good feeling with you out of that. And I know it's a weird thing. It doesn't technically matter the order that you win the games in. There's just always something that feels a little sour about dropping that game when you have a chance for a sweep. But at the end of the day, like I don't think there's any, any concern there at all. First time they've been shut out this season, I think. I think it was the first time they haven't had an extra base hit as well. So it's just one of those days where you have those kind of days in baseball that, Xander didn't get off to a good start there. Snead came in and gave the team a chance to win. Ultimately, just could never get the bats going. And the way Tennessee's been killing the ball this season, it's like consistently up and down their lineup, it was bound to have one of those days where just everybody was off on the same day. It happens. That's life in baseball. You're still in a really good spot, and now you've got a chance to hopefully win the SEC East if some things go your way, and go into Hoover with some momentum, and ultimately, get to Omaha. I mean, that's the goal now. You want to win the SEC tournament, of course. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment if you can do that. But getting to Omaha, taking care of business there. This Tennessee team feels like, I mean, they've got to win a championship under Vitello at some point. There's so much talent. He's such a good coach, but you only really get so many chances at this. And I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit more in a minute, but it really has felt like an official changing of the guard where Vanderbilt has been just like that it program for so long. And you can just kind of see it in Tim Corbin. Like it almost feels like he might be running out of gas maybe when you see him talk, or maybe that's just his demeanor in general. He's not exactly the jolliest guy in college baseball, but it really does feel like a changing of the guard has taken place over the last couple of years. And this, going to Nashville and winning that series just kind of confirms it. There was really no major drama or anything. They just went and took care of business.
Yeah, they definitely did. And to that point with Corbin, I mean, what was his quote? I think it was after game 2 where just Tennessee for those first 2 games, Vanderbilt kind of held Tennessee in check, held them in check, and then Tennessee would work them down to the bullpen and then just blast them. And that happened in 2 straight games. Corbin was asked about it, and what did he say? It was like, until Jesus comes back, we have what we have, or something like that. Or unless Jesus comes back into the picture, we have what we have. Yeah, he's definitely not what he used to be, and I think that's pretty clear overall. They're still super talented, but they helped their chances of potentially making the postseason by beating Tennessee on Sunday. But to really help them, they would have needed to win that series, and they didn't. And that's just what's going on with them at this point. And there has really been just that tectonic plate shift back towards Tennessee. Not even back towards Tennessee. It was never really with Tennessee. There was the Rod Delmonico days where you had a pretty nice little run there, but it wasn't like this. It wasn't where you were just perpetually year after year after year in the elite of college baseball. And now you are, and I mean you are obviously ranked number one. Somehow number two is Kentucky, and kind of has been perpetually all season. And we're going to talk about that in just a second too. Uh, but it is interesting just seeing, uh, especially Vandy fans, what they've kind of consigned themselves to. They can't beat Tennessee in football. They can't beat Tennessee in basketball. Now baseball has been taken from them also, and baseball kind of in full. I mean, if you miss the NCAA tournament, what even is the point, sort of? Um, and I, I don't know. It's a sad state of affairs over there in Nashville, but
do
it
you
is.
do you think? I mean, who was more surprised that Vanderbilt won that game on Sunday, Vanderbilt or Tennessee? Because if you're Vanderbilt and you have a 3-0 lead, you get into the sixth, seventh inning, you're just waiting, right? Like I'm a Mets fan. People know I'm a Mets fan, right? They just played the Braves, and every time, and especially last season, I've saw the Mets get like 4 or 5 nothing run leads on Atlanta just to lose the game. Like that's how I imagine Vanderbilt fans felt when they finally got one. They're like, oh, thank God. Like I don't know what happened, but it wasn't so much that we won that game as that Tennessee just they didn't win it. So somebody had to. I mean, I'm sure Vanderbilt fans were just waiting for that huge inning that unfortunately never came on Sunday.
Yeah, I think I was texting with friends of mine, and we were basically saying like, okay, just get to the bullpen, it'd be all right, and that's just what it felt like in that game, and especially with just how ridiculous this lineup is. It's arguably the best Tennessee's ever had in program history. I mean, it just is ridiculous the way these guys just shell, and um, it just net for some reason. Maybe they were just due that game at some point, but they have been undeniable for most of the season. They were in those first two games against Vandy, and hey, congratulations, Vandy. I saw a whole
Hey,
set of Vandy fans were tweeting about it. Oh, look at the loser
no,
Vols.
yeah,
Yeah. we
you
we
don't
lost
like
the
you.
series, but we won the game.
No, you can't celebrate too much after just winning one game, losing the series. You cannot do a victory lap there. Even if they would have won the series, they still aren't really going anywhere. But thank
That,
goodness that didn't happen.
yeah, I mean, if you won the series, that would have been you still lost 8 of the last 10. Now it's 9
Yeah.
of the last 10, and you're celebrating somehow. More power to them.
Hey, now we got to go cheer for them, though, right? I mean, now we're in a
So
situation where we hope they turn it around, and you have one really really good weekend.
yes, I will say Vandy goes to Kentucky, and here's the thing: Tennessee plays South Carolina, which is pretty advantageous for Tennessee. Out of the 3 teams at the top of the SEC currently, Arkansas has to play Texas A&M, who is another team right at the top of the SEC and at the top of in national rankings. And so that's going to be probably a great series. Let's see, it's in College Station, so a little bit in A&M's favor probably there. And then Kentucky does get to play at home, but they play Vandy. Again, Vandy talented roster. I don't think that they're being maximized at the moment. But a talented roster. And so I'll say, let's go, Vandy. Go ahead and win those games because Tennessee plays South Carolina, and South Carolina currently 13-14 in the league, kind of just middling in the middle of the pack, just like Vandy. They're sort of right in that same area. Although I think South Carolina on the whole for the season, it has been a little better, and aren't they currently ranked 13th, 14th, 15th, somewhere right in there. I don't know exactly what they're ranked at the moment nationally. Maybe they were last week, and I haven't seen today's update. Tennessee was still number 1 today. That's all I really saw from it. But so that's the way it ends up, and you have a chance to win the SEC East for the second time in 3 years here. And for some, I mean, I don't know. I guess baseball's weird, and sort of anybody kind of has a chance a little more in baseball than in
Yeah,
other sports.
I
But it's
mean,
so weird going up against Kentucky in this spot. Just such
it
a
is.
usually terrible team.
And like when it comes to the SEC tournament, I'm not sure how it's all going to play out, and the brackets and who Tennessee will end up playing, but like really, one of the teams that you should be most nervous about right now is Georgia. Oddly enough, I mean they're
Yeah,
they're pretty hot lately. I think they've won like 7 or 8, 9 in a row, something like that, 8 in a row, I think. So that those are the teams that kind of make you nervous when you get into these tournaments because we talk about it all the time in baseball, like getting hot at the right time. Tennessee's been able to sustain what they're doing. It feels like they're really focused. They're not really gonna have a lapse. They might have a bad game, bad pitching game. I mean, anything can happen. But as far as just going out there and competing, leaving it all out there, I don't think you're going to see this Tennessee team not do that. But Georgia's one that they could be a little concerning. They're kind of peaking at the right time.
Yeah, they're one of those outliers that, hey, play right at the right time. That is the name of the game in college baseball. It always seems like, the 2 years where the Mississippi schools won back-to-back national championships, but neither of them had particularly impressive regular seasons that year. Just went in and torched the postseason, and just that Mississippi State team. I'll always kind of remember that. Tennessee murdered that Mississippi State team in the SEC tournament that year. And, I think we run ruled them in the game that we played, and they go on and they win a national championship. It really is just, it's like baseball. You can win a national championship in baseball based on like vibes. You really can.
I mean, that's why Vandy, clearly the vibes at Vandy are off. And I think it's because, look, what Tim Corbin did for so long worked for baseball. That's just how baseball was played. And you've really seen such a seismic shift in the sport. And of course, that starts in college, because you saw it in college before anywhere else. College has always been a little more kind of energized when it comes to, players showing their personality and just the energy they play the game with. But with Tennessee, and it's not just Tennessee. I know Tennessee has the reputation for the antics and all that, especially from the 2022 team, but it's all across the sport, and it has been for a while. And Tim Corbin's philosophy just doesn't quite line up with the way that kids grow up playing the game now. It just doesn't. And I'm not saying like Tim Corbin's cooked or anything like that. Like, he might have some more good Vandy teams. Who knows? You really never know in baseball, but it does kind of feel like it's passed him by a little bit. Like, he's not adapting well to this new style of baseball.
Yep. It has kind of been, well, who knows? He could pull a Saban, sort of reinvent himself. I don't know.
Yeah, well, he needs to. I mean,
he has to. If he can pull when Saban kind of shamelessly went to spread offenses and hired Kiffin and did all that stuff, hey, maybe Corbin will do the same. But until then, he is what he is right now, and I'll take it. I'm happy about it.
I mean, if you're a kid growing up playing baseball right now, who do you want to go? You want to go to Vanderbilt, or you want to go to Tennessee? For so long, the answer was Vanderbilt, and I think you're really starting to see that shift a lot. That's going to be tough to overcome.
Absolutely, but the way things shake out this weekend for the SEC East, really nobody else is in contention except for Kentucky and Tennessee in any realistic sense, and maybe even mathematically. I think that might be the case. Georgia is the closest in third, and they are 3 full games behind Tennessee. So, yeah, that is a no-go for them. But unless Tennessee and Kentucky both get fully swept, and then even then, I think Tennessee won the series against Georgia, so I think Tennessee would win the SEC East. But regardless, Tennessee needs to sweep South Carolina. I'm going to say that's probably not going to happen. Maybe you lose. I think you win 2 out of 3. Just personally, although South Carolina got swept by Georgia, I actually looked. They dropped all the way down to 24th. I guess they got swept at home by Georgia. So,
yeah, it's tough.
That is what happened to win that.
Tumble in college baseball rankings, but you get swept at home. That'll do it.
Yeah, that's like 10 plus spots they dropped there.
That's a pretty big drop for college baseball.
I mean, I watched some. Tuned in a little bit of the Georgia series there, and 13th, I believe, is what they were ranked. So, woof. But they do have to play in Lindsey Nelson Stadium in Knoxville. Tennessee needs a sweep. Let's say 2 out of 3, and Kentucky wins 2 out of 3. Kentucky would be your SEC East champions. If Tennessee sweeps, Kentucky loses one, I believe Tennessee would be the SEC East champions. And obviously, if Kentucky gets swept somehow, and then Tennessee wins 2. Obviously, you win the league there, or your division. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Ultimately, to me, let's make it to the postseason and just see what happens. At this point with Vitello's teams, it's all kind of academic when it comes to this stuff. You've won an
Yeah.
SEC tournament. You've won an SEC East title. You've done all of this stuff.
Yeah, we're
It's
not
time to
going to
win now.
be. You want to go win the SEC tournament because you want to win. Period. But we're
Yeah.
not going to be heartbroken if they lose. Now we'll be heartbroken if they don't get to Omaha, and if they do get to Omaha, we'll be heartbroken that they don't win at all. If they don't, but we won't be, you know, throwing shade at Tony Vitello at that point or anything like that. I mean, hopefully nobody would. Of course, you never know.
With a lineup this powerful, it would be real tough to see them not make it to Omaha.
Yeah, it would, but
boy.
unless Vitello just botches some in-game decisions, which at this point you kind of know what you got. You kind of know where you're going in certain situations. There's not a lot you can do. Just keep everybody loose and focused, and that's really your main job if you're Tony Vitello right now.
Yeah, I mean, you made it last year with a lesser team, so. But as I said, you can win a national championship based on vibes. So you never know what happens, but that is college baseball. Now, let's talk about our second topic of the day here. A little bit of Big Orange Caravan, and specifically, I guess just some observations on Kim Caldwell, because that was the major hiring of the offseason. It's the first time we've kind of gotten to see her in that spotlight, and I thought it was interesting. Obviously, Heupel, Barnes, both there. It's been a good time. But we'll discuss right after I tell you about Farm Bureau Health Plans. Farm Bureau Health Plans has been serving Tennesseans for over 75 years. Much has changed in Tennessee over the years, but some has stayed the same. Farm Bureau has always valued personal relationships, especially when it comes to good health and good service. Plan on Farm Bureau Health Plans for health, dental, and vision. For better coverage, better rates, and better service, go to fbhp.com/ATOZ or walk into one of their 200 plus locations across the state. That is fbhp.com/ATOZ. Farm Bureau Health Plans. Big shout out to them. We always appreciate it. So I think I've always had a little bit of a split opinion on the Big Orange Caravan. Not a split opinion. I like it. It's a cool thing. It's always a cool thing. But you remember a few years ago when it went away, and a lot of people got up in arms. Oh, they took away the Caravan. I can't believe this. I was sort of like, what if Heupel had more time to go and recruit and go into it's I know I like it, and it's just I say that to say I'm never going to have particularly strong feelings about this event and what happens there. It's just a fun thing for the fans. I don't know if you do, Zach. Am I offending you by saying that?
Terribly. No, I've never really thought about that aspect of it. I do remember when that happened and some of the outrage, but I think it's a good thing. I like that they do it. I think it's an important thing just because you get a chance during what traditionally is the slowest time of the year for everybody outside of the baseball program and softball and some of the spring sports, as far as your top main sports, right? Like football, men's basketball, women's basketball. That's kind of the slowest time of year for them traditionally. Now you've got kind of the portal stuff thrown in there, so it's not the case anymore. The slowest time would be, early July, I guess, at this point. But I just think it's so important to go. You get to Memphis, you get to Nashville, Chattanooga, the Tri-Cities area. Like, you get to all these different parts of the state where so many Tennessee fans are that, I don't know, I just feel like it kind of, Tennessee's a very unique in the fact that I know Vanderbilt exists, but for the most part, it is Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee Vols, that's it across the state. You don't really have, like in some states, LSU's, another one that's similar in Louisiana. Most states have multiple, Power 5 schools and fandoms, but Tennessee's so unified in that way. I think it's a really unique thing that they do. And for recruiting purposes too, of course, getting to Nashville, which is becoming more and more important. Memphis, especially huge, and Chattanooga as well. I mean, that's a massive recruiting area as well. So I think that part of it's important too. And it's, the vibes, like you were talking about baseball, the vibes are great coming out of the Big Orange Caravan. Heupel and Rick Barnes, I mean, they're kind of like this little bromance going on with some of the jokes they throw at each other on when they're on radio interviews. And Heupel really seems comfortable in that environment, which is funny because when Heupel was hired at Tennessee, so much of the criticism, and I was actually looking back at some of this the other day when Heupel was hired from the Oklahoma aspect. I was reading kind of what some of the Oklahoma folks had said back in 2021 when Heupel was hired. And that was one of the things, like, how's he going to handle the media? Everybody kind of said he's not great with the media. There were even some UCF folks. I remember talking to a UCF reporter uh, in private one time. He was just kind of talking about, like, how does Heupel do media sessions and kind of what's his philosophies on all that. And his thing was like, he's terrible. Like, he doesn't say anything. And we know that now. Like, in his direct press conferences, he's not going to give away too much. But it's not going to be like Butch Jones, Jeremy Pruitt-esque. Like, he's still likable. But in these radio interviews and these like long form interviews that he does, he's very personable and down to earth and charismatic and likes to joke around. He really connects with whoever he's talking to. So you can imagine, in front of a crowd of people when you're it's almost like being a politician, I guess. It's the same thing. And Rick Barnes, of course, is the same way. So I think that part of it is just, I don't know. If it went away, it wouldn't be a huge deal, but I hope it doesn't, just because I think it's a good thing to do.
Yeah, overall, I definitely agree. It's something to keep, and it is really nice, and it is, yeah. Not every school can do that, and that's always
huge crowds. I mean, lots of schools would do that. Like, you would get an event like, I don't mean to pile on Vanderbilt. It's a fine school.
I do.
I get it, but but if they did that, I mean, imagine a Vanderbilt Big Orange Caravan stop in Bristol. Who's There's gonna be 3 people there. Like, it's just,
that
in Tennessee, they're like
of people would be
packing
so
a room. Yeah.
It's a great point, and I don't mind it at all. And I will say, I think it is always awesome to see all those coaches in a little bit more of a natural element where it's not just them at a podium getting peppered with questions from media, where they're going to be guarded, where that they're not going to feel like they're going to be goofy or laid back or anything like that. You can see them more in a natural environment like that, which is great. To your point about Heupel, absolutely true. He's gotten far better over time and just more comfortable, and that's bound to happen. The first time I did radio, you're nervous, you're clammy, don't say anything stupid. Oh my gosh! And then now I can turn on a mic and it's second nature, and it just eventually it comes, no matter if you're the world's biggest introvert or not. And I think Heupel, to a certain extent, at least it seems like he's a family man. He doesn't love that spotlight, and he wants to coach football and be a father, and that's about it. It seems like, at least when you hear the guy talk.
I think he's where he feels like he's supposed to be. And I don't know how he was at Oklahoma and Missouri. Obviously, you're much more in behind the scenes and not talking to the media a lot or doing interviews. He's at UCF. Like, he went to UCF. Like, that guy, knowing what we know about Heupel now, like, he's a super competitive, very competitive as a player. Still has that trait, just that ultra competitiveness. I think there was part of him, and especially after what happened at Oklahoma when he got let go after 2014 by Bob Stoops, that felt like he should be on that big stage, like the SEC stage or wherever he was going to end up. Obviously, he didn't know he was going to end up at Tennessee when he was at UCF for a few years, but I think he knew that's like, this isn't where this isn't long term, right? Like, I'm where my feet are and we're doing the best we can for now, but this is a stepping stone to something bigger. Like, I should be on a bigger stage. And now that he is, I feel like you're actually seeing Heupel for who he's wanted to be as a coach for all these years. Like, when he was at Oklahoma, like, this is what he wanted to be. For whatever reason, it didn't work out there. Kind of had to reinvent himself a little. Well, not really even reinvent himself, just kind of be who he wanted to be. And now that he is, of course, he's more comfortable because he is, living out his plan and his vision.
For sure. And to that point of kind of growing into a spot like that, and this was one of the main things I wanted to bring up. It was really interesting seeing Kim Caldwell in that scenario, because she goes from being hired to being immediately thrust into, hey, come greet the fans. Here is everybody who is a fan of the program that you now lead, that is one of the greatest programs in the history of this sport. and has like a cult fan base that's absolutely rabid, and there's a whole set of that fan base that didn't want the current coach fired, and there was just a lot that came with that. And I've watched some of her talking, and it wasn't. I would not, in no way would I say that it was bad. It definitely wasn't bad. It was very similar to Heupel. Is exactly what I would say, because you look at her background. So she's from Parkersburg, West Virginia. Played at Glenville State, then coach at Ohio Valley, Sacramento State, Glenville State. Went back to her alma mater. Then Marshall for 1 year, and now is taking over one of the greatest programs in the history of the sport, and is just thrust into this spot. And I would just say you can tell that's all, and rightfully so. I don't blame her at all. It's a natural reaction. If you did that to me, I mean, for sure you would embrace that coaching opportunity, and it's an incredible one without a doubt. But she's got to be standing there at these events, because it's not only at those events. You don't just go and meet the fans and do the thing, get them in front of everybody and talk. Which she played at Glenville State. I'm gonna say there's probably more people at those Big Orange Caravan events than were at most of the games where she coached at Glenville State. Let's be completely honest. And so Marshall, a little bit bigger, but still kind of small time in terms of college sports. And you went from that to the biggest that it can really get in your sport. And it'll come with time. But that it was kind of just as almost like a social experiment. It was interesting to see how she reacted, because and I didn't finish that thought. It's not just in front of the fans, but at every single one of those, you have to go and you talk to the media too. You have to go talk to the Memphis media and to the Chattanooga media and the Nashville media and get peppered there too. And I don't know if you watched any of her stuff though, Zach, and if you had any thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely kind of got that vibe. I didn't really think about it as much until you kind of pointed that out. I was like, yeah, it does kind of feel like, okay, yeah, a little overwhelmed, but
she talked about it even.
Yeah, it's a good thing, because I mean, she's went through the whole gauntlet of media, right? Even aside from the Big Orange Caravan stuff, she's done a ton of interviews after she got hired. She's done some long form stuff, sit downs. She's went through it all. I mean, she hasn't. You can tell she hasn't really said no, which is, I think, hey, get right into it, get comfortable with it, because it's only going to get more intense. And being there with Josh Heupel and Rick Barnes, at least you're with a couple of coaches that can kind of give you a little bit of advice, give you some pointers, some insiders, like, hey, these media folks are this way, don't say this there, just what to expect, all that kind of stuff, because they've been there, they've done it, they know how it goes. Especially somebody like, well, both of them really have done this for decades, as far as Heupel even being in the spotlight when he was a player, and Barnes being coaching for 35 plus years. It's definitely a good welcome to get into that in May, before you get into the thick of the season, because yeah, there's gonna be a little grace period for her, but at the same time, come next February, March, fans are gonna they're gonna give her a little leeway if the Lady Vols aren't where we hope they are next spring, and who knows how that plays out, but they're going to be wanting wins no matter what. Like, it gets to March, we don't care who the coach is, we just want to see some wins. That's every March. And Lady Vols, I mean, I saw a preseason women's top 25 today. As expected, Lady Vols are absent from that. That's such a weird thing. Like, even though the program has been down since Pat Summitt stepped down, it's still, I don't know, when you grow up, just Lady Vols are just a fixture. I mean, they're in the mix no matter what. Even now, 12, 13 years later, it's still kind of shocking that where the program is. So, I mean, those expectations are still going to be there. And I think she knows that, but it would be overwhelming for anyone. I don't care if you came from a Power 5 school, just because of the history of the program, but especially coming from where she's come from, not really having dealt with that. I mean, the media at Tennessee, as we know, it rivals what you would see it for an NFL team. You know, it's
yeah.
insane, even for women's basketball. So you might as well get comfortable with it because it's going to be your life as long as you're the head coach at Tennessee.
Yeah, settle in. That's the way that it is. And it's a program that has never missed the NCAA tournament in its entire history. In the entire history of the women's NCAA tournament, they've made them all. And so that's and let's say that's not the expectation. It's expected that you make the NCAA tournament. That's a given. It's expected that you make it at least to a Sweet 16. And really, it's been a good long while, but it's essentially expected that you compete at a championship level, hopefully make a Final Four, and put yourself right there. Not expecting that in year one, although she's done a good job on the recruiting trail so far, specifically with the transfer portal, gotten a few players, and hopefully that comes along. But man, that's got to be daunting. And I guess that you would think there's no better motivation to be that young, hungry coach that's also kind of, I don't want to say coaching in like some sort of revolutionary way, but it's a little bit of a hype. She's known for the offense but also a hard-nosed defense too. But she kind of has a signature style, and there would be nothing that would make you hungrier than this crazy fan base breathing down your neck.
But she said that too.
Yeah, and I will say for some people that they embrace that and they become elite. For some people, it crushes them. So we will see which way it goes for Kim Caldwell.
I'm sure it takes a while to get used to. You say something on a podcast, and all of a sudden, because somebody like me, it's a headline on Google, and you're like,
"Yeah, Zach,
what?
Why?
Like, what?
It's media really? Like you that are the problem."
Yeah, I mean that's sports in general. I mean you say anything on a podcast or in an interview, you have to know that it's free game. Like
people are listening.
Yeah, it's something. If it's interesting, if it's controversial, if it's anything, it's going to be out there. Especially in college sports, it seems like, in the SEC, definitely at Tennessee, we know that from experience.
For sure. Well, there's that. Just a few observations from the old Big Orange Caravan. When there's nothing to talk about, you got to talk about something, and that I honestly think that's a pretty interesting topic. As somebody who's coming from media, it's always kind of fascinating to see how coaches react in media. But let's finish with the kind of couple odds and ends. Chaz Lanier, the primary transfer portal target for Tennessee basketball that would really round out that roster, went to the G League Elite Camp, scored 10 points in 33 minutes, did not get chosen as one of the players to get called up to the Combine. And I would say this all but assures that he's coming back to college. Have you seen anything? I mean, that's not written in stone, let me say. You never know. But I would say almost assuredly this means he's coming back. So have you seen anything about the situation?
I mean, the one, I haven't seen if it's official, if it actually happened or not, but I've seen some rumors that Mark Pope was at that workout, the new Kentucky head coach, who is Kentucky is one of the teams that's also pursuing Chaz Lanier. And let's just say you cannot lose this guy to Mark Pope, the coach that nobody at Kentucky really wanted to hire, but they had to hire because everyone else said no. You cannot lose Lanier to that guy. And I know there's other teams in the mix. I think Maryland, oddly, was one of the teams that he's considering. I don't know. It feels like it's still Tennessee. Obviously, he's not going to go to the NBA draft at this point unless he just does not want to play college basketball anymore and would prefer to try to make a roster as an undrafted guy or something. I don't know, but I can't imagine him not landing at Tennessee. But at the same time, recruiting, transfer portal, you never say never. But just the way this had all kind of transpired, it felt academic that it would be Tennessee with a new coaching staff at Kentucky. I don't know why you would want to jump into that, especially when you saw Dalton Knecht just come out of nowhere from Northern Colorado, and he might be a lottery pick in the NBA draft. I mean, that right there is enough to sell anyone to come play for Rick Barnes for a year and boost your stock, especially coming from that G League deal and the NBA draft combine. So he's got the feedback. He knows where he stands. He knows that's where he wants to go. Clearly, it's where every college basketball player wants to get to. I don't know why you would choose anywhere else. I mean, why would you go to the guy at Kentucky that has no track record in the SEC, zero, and some of his own guys didn't even want to follow him there.
No track record anywhere almost.
Yeah,
I mean,
really.
really not done much of anything.
Yeah, that would be a major. You lose him to Kentucky. I mean, you can't really blame Rick Barnes if that happens because of all that he's done good in the portal at this point. Sometimes you got to look at a situation and say, well, that's on the kid. Like he just made a bad decision. That, or what we perceive as a bad decision.
The only thing that's a sort of rogue factor there is sort of the desperate times, desperate measures thing that's probably going on in Kentucky right now. Because God knows, in terms of basketball, they probably have the money to shell out to this kid. I would think. In general, when you hear about Kentucky's collective, they're not as powerful as some. But for basketball, that's where they're going to shell out the dough. And you would think, hey, maybe they, as the great the great criminal Will Wade would say, maybe they give him a strong ass offer. You don't know. Not sure what'll happen there. But outside of that, yeah, I mean, with Dalton Connect and the way that everything's been going for Tennessee, a Hall of Fame coach, why would you choose to go to it's Kentucky? It is Kentucky, but now Kentucky with an absolute nobody coach that nobody knows anything about. Yeah. So, he could turn out good.
Oh, he could, but Tennessee has the better vibes right now too. We can't discount the vibe factor.
Never in college sports, never count out the vibes. That's key. I think that's a new rule for this show. We never forget the vibes.
Look, we've been through the bad vibes we have a decade of experience of bad vibes. So
finally back into the good vibe zone.
I feel like we're vibe experts at this point.
Yes, very much so. But it's just gonna be waiting game at this point with Lanier. We will see. And
it's like the Lance Hurd deal with football. I think you might have mentioned that before. Yeah. It's like the Lance Hurd deal with football.
It's just been dragged out. You're kind of like, this should happen, but it's not totally sure what's going on. We'll find out soon enough. But that news will come, and we'll talk about it when it does. But we can finish with this. Tough day for Hendon Hooker with the Lions. Jared Goff got an extension, and I will say, you never know with the NFL, but boy, that Jared Goff extension feels a heck of a lot like when the Titans gave Ryan Tannehill that extension after Tannehill made the AFC Championship game, and that was a big fat flop. The Titans weren't bad after that, and Tannehill wasn't necessarily bad, but he wasn't good, and he wasn't worth the money anywhere close to the money that they paid. I mean, not even in the stratosphere of what they ended up paying him, and
that is one of the more underrated stories in the NFL over the last decade is the fact that Tannehill got two separate NFL teams to give him big extensions, the Dolphins and the Titans, and they both turned out the exact same way. And it's like a cautionary tale for NFL franchises, yet they still keep Daniel Jones with the Giants got that extension. They're probably going to draft a quarterback next year. They got Malik Neighbors this year. They're probably going to draft a guy. I do not understand. And Miami might do it again with Tua down there, who is just the next version of Tannehill, really. I mean,
good luck to him
in his own way. Yeah. I don't know why teams keep doing this. I mean, who is out there going to compete with that offer for Jared Goff? If Detroit does not extend him, he just becomes the new Kirk Cousins. He bounces around on 1-year deals until somebody like the Falcons, who, I mean, even they kind of screwed that situation up. You sign Kirk Cousins and then draft Michael Penix with your number 8 overall pick. That's a whole nother conversation. I just don't get it. Like, Jared Goff's a fine quarterback and he's a fine starting quarterback, but he's not $55 million, whatever it is, $55 million a year. He's not Patrick Mahomes. I don't get it. And now Hooker, who's already 26, has 3 years remaining on his rookie deal, which means he'll be 29 when he's eligible for free agency. He's heading right where Josh Dobbs was, essentially, just about.
Yep.
Like, he's not going to get a chance to really show what he can do on his rookie deal. So his best hope, assuming Goff doesn't get hurt, and I don't even know if Hooker's the next man up there. I'm not sure Detroit's situation, but I think there's somebody else there too. Sudfeld maybe still. I'm not sure. I don't even know if he would, immediately be the next guy up. But Goff's been pretty durable throughout his career. I think he's played 15, 16, 17 games most every season of his career. So it's not like he's an injury prone guy. And he's kind of a system guy too, so he's gonna play within what he can do. He has some stinkers every now and then, but for the most part, he's fairly consistent. So I think he'll be like Kirk Cousins and kind of be able to be good enough to where Hooker probably has to sit on the bench. And then you get a 1-year deal as a backup, maybe somewhere that you think you can beat the guy out, like the Giants would actually be the perfect team for him right now if he was to get traded. It's a coach that kind of believes in Heupel's offense, and Jalen Hyatt's up there. I mean, that would quarterback's kind of iffy there with Jones. You don't really have a clear answer. That would be a great situation for Hooker. But man, it's just a tough spot for him.
Yeah, I hope that he finds some spot where he actually gets a chance at some point. Because the kid deserves it. He's obviously just an incredible dude, and has bided his time now. He's, as you said, he's 26 and deserves a shot. He's not gonna get it in Detroit, and it's not necessarily that I thought Detroit would turn around and give Hooker a shot when they sort of have. I mean, I guess you'd say it is a little bit of a Super Bowl window here.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, I get Detroit.
Yeah, it's not that I expect them to be like, oh, Hendon Hooker's a new starter.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've seen that. I just, as a Titans fan, I've seen that story before. Don't believe me. I don't think this one's gonna end up particularly well for the Lions, unfortunately. Not and maybe he turns around and wins the Super Bowl next year. Lord knows, but color me skeptical. I'd say it that way.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate for Hooker. If he doesn't tear the ACL against South Carolina, maybe he gets drafted a little bit higher in a better situation and just has a chance. Like, we have no clue how Hendon Hooker would fare as an NFL quarterback. Like, projecting NFL quarterbacks is one of the hardest things in sports, period. Front offices miss on it every single year. Not every one of these guys that was just drafted in the first round, last month is going to hit. Probably half of them won't hit. Maybe one or two of them end up being franchise caliber guys. The rest of them are going to probably go down the Tannehill path or the Sam Darnold path, where you're just kind of hoping to get a job and maybe get a chance and kind of have a great season. But for Hooker, you don't really get that chance right now. Your hands are kind of tied, where really all because of that ACL injury. I mean, he was a Heisman front runner in 2022, played out of his mind that season and played really clutch, good football for Tennessee overall. I mean, you saw the drop off in the offense in 2023 when Joe Milton was back there. It was a completely different offense with Hooker running it. So I know there's the talk about the system stuff, but I don't feel like that necessarily applies to Hendon Hooker. I think he showed enough to show that he deserves a chance to be, a guy in the NFL. And maybe he gets that chance and it doesn't work out for him, but at least he would know. At least he would have the chance.
I hope he gets it. And we'll just have to see if he actually does. I think that's a show. Charlie Burris, Zach Reagan, thanks to everybody for watching. We truly appreciate it. Couldn't do this show without you. I say it every single week, and I mean it every single week. But thank you again. And I'll say maybe next week we'll have more to talk about. But then I also say, do I want more? Hopefully, the more to talk about is just Chaz Lanier commits to Tennessee basketball, and football gets a 5-star commitment, and baseball wins the SEC East. That's the more I want to be talking about next week. We'll see. But thanks again. Seriously, at Charlie_Burris, at Zach TNT, you know where to find us. Yada yada yada. If you made it this far, you are well acquainted with us. Thanks again for watching. We will talk to y'all next week.
See you guys later.